The sun hung low over Carter Ranch, painting the Montana sky in shades of amber and rust. Jack Carter stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the day settle into evening. He had lived on this land for 37 years, ever since his father passed it down to him. The ranch stretched across 2,000 acres of golden grassland, dotted with cattle and framed by distant mountains. It was peaceful here, quiet, or at least it used to be. The first drone appeared on a Tuesday morning in late September. Jack was mending a fence near the eastern pasture when he heard it, a distant buzzing like an angry wasp. He looked up and saw a black shape hovering above the tree line, maybe 100 feet in the air. It stayed there for several minutes, perfectly still, before drifting away toward the north. He thought nothing of it at first. Probably some kid from town, he figured, playing with a new toy. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, but sound carried far out here. He went back to work, hammering posts into the hard earth, the rhythm steady and familiar. But the drone came back the next day. And the day after that. By the end of the week, Jack had seen it a dozen times, always at different hours. Sometimes in the morning, sometimes at dusk. It would appear without warning, hover over various parts of his property, then disappear just as quietly. He tried waving at it once, thinking maybe someone would get the message and leave him alone. The drone simply adjusted its position and continued watching. Sarah, his wife of 20 years, noticed his growing unease. Maybe it's a surveying company, she suggested one evening as they sat on the porch. Didn't the county say something about updating property maps? Maybe, Jack replied, though he didn't sound convinced. But why would they need to come back so many times? And why not ask permission first? Sarah squeezed his hand. She had learned long ago that Jack was a man of few words, but when something bothered him, it ran deep. You could call the sheriff, she offered. And say what? That someone's flying a drone over my land? It's probably not even illegal. He shook his head. I'm sure it'll stop soon enough. But it didn't stop. Instead, more drones appeared. By the second week, Jack counted at least 5 different machines. Some were small and quick, darting between the barns like mechanical hummingbirds. Others were larger, industrial-looking, with cameras that swiveled and tracked movement. They seemed to be mapping everything. The house, the outbuildings, the cattle, even the old water tower that hadn't been used in years. Jack started losing sleep. He would wake at 3 in the morning and look out the window, half expecting to see lights hovering in the darkness. During the day, he found himself constantly scanning the sky, his neck sore from craning upward. The ranch, once his sanctuary, began to feel like a cage with invisible walls. This isn't right, he told Sarah one night. Something's going on. The next morning, Jack decided to follow one of the drones. He waited until he spotted a larger model hovering near the south pasture. Then he climbed into his truck and drove slowly across the field, keeping the machine in sight. The drone moved steadily toward the boundary of his property, and Jack followed. When it crossed onto the neighboring land, an abandoned farm that had been empty for 3 years, he stopped at the fence line and watched. The drone descended into a cluster of old buildings. Jack grabbed his binoculars from the glove compartment and focused on the scene. What he saw made his blood run cold. There were people there, at least a dozen of them, moving between trucks and equipment. But they weren't surveyors or utility workers. They were setting up something. Large panels, machinery, cables running between structures, and dozens of drones lined up in neat rows, like soldiers waiting for orders. Jack's hands trembled as he lowered the binoculars. He drove home faster than he should have, gravel spraying behind his tires. Call Sheriff Davis, he told Sarah the moment he walked through the door. Tell him to come out here now. Sheriff Tom Davis arrived within the hour. He was a big man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that had served him well in 20 years of law enforcement. He listened carefully as Jack explained everything. The drones, the frequency of their visits, the operation he had discovered on the neighboring property. I'll check it out, Davis promised. But Jack, I need you to stay away from there. If something illegal is happening, I don't want you getting involved. 2 days later, Sheriff Davis returned with news. It's a tech company, he explained, sitting at the Carter's kitchen table. They bought that property 6 months ago. They're testing some kind of agricultural monitoring system. Supposedly it's all legal, though they should have notified surrounding landowners. Why are they watching my ranch? Jack asked. Davis shrugged. They claim they're just mapping the area, gathering data about land use and farming practices. They say it's for research. He paused. But between you and me, Jack, I didn't like the way they acted when I showed up. Too defensive, too secretive. I've asked them to stay off your property, and I'll be keeping an eye on them. The drones stopped coming after that. The sky above Carter Ranch returned to its natural state, empty except for clouds and the occasional hawk. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He found himself checking the tree lines, looking for cameras, wondering what data they had collected and what they planned to do with it. One evening, about a month after the drones disappeared, Jack and Sarah sat on the porch watching the sunset. The cattle were grazing peacefully. The wind moved through the grass like waves on an invisible ocean. Everything looked the way it always had. You know what bothers me most? Jack said quietly. Sarah looked at him, waiting. For a while there, this place didn't feel like mine anymore. Like I was just a tenant and someone else was the real owner. Someone I couldn't even see. Sarah took his hand. But it is yours, Jack. It always has been. He nodded slowly, squeezing her fingers. Yeah, I know. I guess I never realized how much that mattered until someone tried to take it away. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. The land stretched out before them, vast and beautiful and unmistakably theirs. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. The watchers were gone, but the memory of their presence would remain, a reminder that even in the quietest corners of the world, privacy was becoming a precious thing, and out here, on Carter Ranch, it was worth protecting.